This episode is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the #1 tool for all podcasters. You can record high-fidelity audio between remote locations and get studio-quality sound. Go to Zencastr.com and use coupon code THATENTERTAINS for 20% off for 3 months or 20% off an annual plan.
This is a That's Entertainment podcast.
Awesome.
Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. That was awesome. You guys are awesome.
No,
You're awesome.
no.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And it feels like I haven't said that in quite some time. And that's because last week, for part 1 of our discussion with the other Everything is Awesome podcast, I let them intro the show. So we are continuing our show this week with part 2 of my conversation with Jeff and KC KAOS from the other Everything is Awesome podcast. But before we get there, I just want to say thank you to all our Patreon supporters. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that we do. If you like early access, Patreon exclusive, like Everything is Awesome's Building a Better Kev series, Victims and Villains, Daria recap series, and more, head on over to patreon.com/thatentertains. For about the cost of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can get these subscription benefits and more. If you're looking for a non-monetary way to help support this show, 5-star iTunes rating and reviews helps, and of course word-of-mouth recommendations help spread the good word of Everything is Awesome. As I said, this is part 2 of my conversation with the Everything is Awesome with Jeff and KC podcast. We're finishing our discussion, and we bleed into a version of their show that they normally do. I am so excited that we sat down and made this crossover happen. It's been a weird kind of thing existing in a world where there's another podcast called Everything is Awesome, and now that we've crossed over, we've had the multiverse clash. It's been such a fun ride. So let's finish that conversation up right now here on awesomepodcast.com, and of course on the That's Entertainment Podcast Network on thatentertains.com/network. Yeah, so streaming. We were, so with the Stabcast, we were getting some decent numbers. The best numbers I ever had, and this will probably lead into a conversation of some sort. I used to. This is actually one of the shows that there's controversy behind for many different reasons. But I used to do a show called. It's currently called the Zomcast, but in the beginning it was called the Walking Dead Zomcast, and it was a recap show for The Walking Dead. We started it in season 1 with episode 1. It was around before The Talking Dead. In fact, the reason I didn't call it The Talking Dead was because there was a podcast already called The Talking Dead. But when we were doing that show, we started streaming it live, and Stickcam contacted me about that one and were like, hey, we want to try to make you like and this was probably in season 2 of The Walking Dead. We want to make you guys like the online version of AMC's Talking Dead. And we were like, great, let's do it. So like we were getting 10,000 total views within the hour. And then consistently we probably had like over 1,000 people in the chat room. So that was by far the most popular show I did when it came to live streaming. Our downloads were crap. No one downloaded that show, but everyone watched it live.
Right. Isn't that the weird dichotomy between like often what is really exciting live is lacking something in terms of like archivability. It's like a weird inverse relation between like the heat of the moment and like some of my favorite shows that talk about other shows, like Decoding Westworld, for example. If they wait till Wednesday to put out the show, it's usually way better than if they put it out like right after. There's something about that time sitting with the material, it seems like, makes it meatier. I think.
No, I agree. And um, uh, it's,
Could
I
that
don't
be
know. I
partly
don't
why
do,
podcast conventions don't always? Well, for example, one year LA Podfest, a couple of years they streamed the shows and let you like watch them later, and then they stopped doing that. I wonder if it's because people aren't watching them later.
I don't know. Cause with the Philly Podcast Fest, we don't, they're, even this year, I think was the first year
They're
we
not
didn't
streaming?
stream at least through an audio format. We did at least the 2 previous years that I was involved. We did audio streaming, and it's something I suggested was like, hey, why don't we video stream this stuff for people that can't make it out? And there's just some logistics because there's so many different venues and whatnot to make it happen at least for us.
Okay, yeah.
Because
I'm sure it's a technical nightmare. Not to mention there's like licensing issues with music. Like it's a whole rigmarole.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoever cracks that code will probably make a little coin.
Yeah, I think, I mean, and I think there's still like a strong presence for live streaming a podcast. I think it's just shifted. Obviously Facebook seems to be like one of the places to do it, and I think Twitch is the place to do it as well. But Twitch, it's a very, seems like it has to have some sort of gaming theme with it. I don't know that I could go and do my show streaming it on Twitch.
Just talking with a creator and talking about comics or whatever.
Yeah, I think if maybe it was specifically I did a show like if I did a talking show about, like, I'm trying to think of one of the shows on the One Shot Podcast Network, like Backstory. That would probably be a show that would work well on Twitch because at least they're talking about game design and whatnot. But this show that's a little bit more has like a general theme. Like I never expect my numbers to ever be. And I don't pay attention to numbers anymore. Like that's something I gave up on. Like I don't care if people listen to the show or not. Like I mean, I do.
I got tired of crying about it.
Okay, so here's my mindset with it is I started podcasting in 2007 with the mindset of like this is going to be my career. Like this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make money off of podcasting. And
I mean, it kind of made sense back then, right? Because it was like radio is changing. Yes. Maybe the radio money will flow into the podcasting realm.
Yeah.
But it's been a very circuitous route since then.
Yeah, and I just don't think that's the right mindset, especially in a 2018 world of podcasting. It's not the right mindset. And when I started this show, like that was my thing, was like, I'm not going to go into Everything is Awesome with the mindset of I'm going to make money. Like, let's just do a show for me. Let me do the show that makes me happy. And I have, this show is by far, like, it's not the least popular show I've done, but it's not the most popular show I've done. I've definitely done better numbers, but it's definitely the most creative fulfillment I've had, I think, because it's the show I want to do. And I still, like, I dabble in producing other shows with the network, and I'm in the process of developing other shows that could be a lot of fun, but at the end, like with all of them, the mindset isn't making money. It's more so like, how can I make this a fun experience for me and the people that are going to be involved with writing and producing it and whatnot. Like, let's make this just fun for us, and hopefully people come and watch it. And if like that turns into Patreon dollars, great. If it doesn't, then like whatever.
That's a good attitude to have.
Yeah, I think having an attitude about making money off of, like, if you're gonna think that you're gonna make all the ad money or all the Patreon dollars, like it's a 1 in a million shot to be that guy that makes money. Like I truly, James D'Amato, do you listen? I know, so you listen to Party of One. Do you listen to James D'Amato?
I like James. I've listened to a couple of things, but not. I haven't binged the whole thing.
So I've listened to all of One Shot and Campaign, but more of my point to James and the One Shot Podcast Network is that, like, when he was able to make that his full-time job, like, I think there's a section of podcasters that could be really jealous about that. because that doesn't happen to everybody. But like for me, I looked at that and I was just like, that's like, I sent him an email and to congratulate him. And like, I was just so happy for him, because like that is a once in a lifetime opportunity for him to, or for anybody to be able to say, I'm a professional. I think he words it comedian because that's what he went to school for. But I look at it, he's a professional podcaster. And is he making all the choices I would do if I had that opportunity? No, like I there's choices that I would do much differently than him, but we're also, two different podcasters, two different people. We're not in the same genre of podcasts. But I couldn't be happier for the guy. Like that's such a dream come true. And knowing who James is and how nice he is and how genuinely caring he is about people, like it couldn't happen to a nicer dude, in my opinion. So like, I don't know, that's the mindset I have, is like, be happy for those that it happened to. And like, if it happens to you, great. If not, like, at least you're making the product that matters most to me.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I've definitely asked Jeff, like, if he could, would he do podcasting full time? And I think that was a no, right?
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Why not?
Well, okay, so here's the deal. I love talking to people. I love editing. I like booking, but it sucks when you don't get the person you like, and the person that comes makes you feel like it's a favor, or they don't promote the thing after it's done. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't need to be complaining, but like there's little things that hurt my little baby soul. And so I could do without those. So making it a job, right? Like all that stuff has to,
Pressure.
all the like angst and bullshit, you just got to shelve it in. I'm doing this for money. And I could do that. I would do that. But I guess as an artist, I can't be thinking about it. I can't imagine what that's going to look like, because you guarantee like most comedians never thought they'd be where they are. They just did the job.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with podcasting. And just do what you love, and maybe somebody will at the very least pay you to not so I'm not continuing to pay to make this my hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what starting a Patreon, get the server paid for or whatever.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, that's where I'm at now after like 10 years of doing this, is like I feel like I'm finally ready to say like, all right, I do want to get paid, maybe not get paid where I'm making it my full-time career, but like I've put the time and energy in, and I feel like I'm good enough, and I feel like I produce content that's outside of Everything Is Awesome as well. That's good enough to like, hey, like throw $1 a month or $2 a month at me for Patreon. And honestly, like it's not so I can make money. Like that money is getting put right back into the system. Like it's just to make sure, like if the out-of-pocket expenses are covered, then that means there's cooler things that can be done. Like, I can spend some money to, if I need to spend money to book a bigger guest that I've been dreaming of, then great. Like I can do that. Or if I want to, go to a convention that's outside of Philadelphia, great. I can do that because I can afford to travel now.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. TBTL, for example, they finally got to be able to have it be their mostly full-time job through American Public Media. They get to do shows in other states now. A Mental Illness Happy Hour, Paul Gilmartin, he's in Europe right now because of his Patreon subscribers. Like the Dollop travels all over the world. Like, yeah, like that is really exciting. And that Patreon exists, that you can go to people and be like, look, you want the show to be cooler? It's cooler all of a sudden. We got cool art. You can buy merch, all that stuff. That's really awesome.
Yeah, but I would be happy just to simply not pay like I think I figured it out to like be like around like $300 a year. So it's not like a huge amount of server costs, but still like $300 a year for a podcast that I've been doing for 10 years is a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we were weekly, and then that was just too much on our schedule, and so we dropped it down to once a month, and now we're kind of like, maybe we should do every 2 weeks, like just to kind of keep the momentum going, like keep that energy going, because it was exciting and like a routine that we had gotten into. But then Jeff has all like, so I
got into the actual play podcast.
And so now he's got his Shattered Worlds RPG game that he does. So
she calls it Scattered Worlds.
Sometimes I just feel like he is, that energy that he could be putting into Everything is Awesome is now getting dispersed into other podcasts, which is fine because podcasts is his passion, his love, and I get it. But sometimes it, like, as the co-host of Everything is Awesome, it's hard for me not to feel like, oh man, like all that time you're editing for Scattered World, like you could be like cleaning up our website or setting up a Patreon or doing Instagram things or like all these things that if I had the time I would do, you know. And like I really admire that you have like the graphics. I really like that you keep that consistent for your podcast. I like
that pivot, by the way.
Yeah. I was not pivoting. I'm speaking the truth. And this is not a surprise to you. But you know, like it's that energy is so, it's like if you're producing other shows and, you know, doing other networks and stuff, so maybe you can relate with Jeff, is like if you're not putting all of it here, you're also kind of dispersing it into other podcast pots, you know, and so sometimes that kind of takes away from this show, I feel like, from getting bigger because you're not putting all of it into this one podcast. So I've just kind of resigned myself to the fact, like, this is my little love letter into the universe. And, you know, it's like a time capsule.
Yeah.
Of a conversation.
There is something that is
and
missing,
storytelling. And
I'm sure Kevin can relate to this. There is something that we lose by not doing it every week. Which is, one, we don't always have a conversation this deep every week. But then also
it's awkward to have a "what'd you do last week" conversation when it was like a month ago.
Yeah,
which we totally skipped over.
We still do it, but yeah, we could do it. But we don't get that our week kind of freshness with the listener.
Yeah.
And so I wonder sometimes if maybe people. But then again, I feel totally narcissistic. Are people wondering what our regular life is like?
Yeah.
Like,
what? We don't have a lot of like listener interaction. Yeah. I mean, I have friends who I play roller derby, so I have friends who learn about my podcast through my Facebook, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, I listened to you and Jeff for this episode and thought this was cool." So there's like a handful of people that I know like listen and subscribe. But we don't necessarily have, you know, like the hundreds of listeners. Like hundreds of people to show up for a live taping, I feel.
Yeah, or I mean, even just emails. Like I literally had a guy walk up to me at work and tell me he heard my podcast, but nobody can send me an email? Like, what's going on?
Well, and truthfully, we don't, like, I don't get that either. Like I said earlier, the fact that people show up to my live shows amazes me because I'm really bad at A, marketing, B, interaction outside of the show itself. And part of that is that like I'm not real good at the whole, you know, marketing branding thing. So like where I should be probably using the show Twitter more, I don't. Like I think I go things about the Kevin Smith way where I'm using my @thatnerdykev handle for everything. And I know that's probably not the right way to do things, but I like the way I envision what I would like to see myself doing in the next few years is more of branding as myself, with me doing Everything is Awesome and me doing these other projects. So like I would love to moderate.
That would make sense. Yeah.
I mean, that's the weird thing about social media is it's this whole other brain space that you have to occupy.
Yes.
Put away all the weird political shit that goes on and the stovepiping and all that. But just like at times you're supposed to market yourself as a personal brand. At times you're supposed to engage with your listeners through the show.
Yeah.
Like
I kind of got on Jeff about it because he was definitely like just using his personal one.
And now I just use Shattered Worlds because like my personal one got
I was
weird.
Like, this needs to be consistent. So, you know, I was like making him go to the Everything is Awesome podcast page and upload there and then share to the private page.
Yes.
That way, I mean, that's how the corporates do
Yeah,
it.
and that's how like everything gets shared to the quote unquote corporate Twitter. Like it gets shared to the to my Everything is Awesome Twitter feed, and then I'll tweet quote that on my personal brand. But that's, you know, I'm just so bad at it. Like that's and
And you know what though? To be fair, like it's constantly changing.
Yes. I am old. I cannot be learning shit. You guys are younger than me. I'm done.
Well, and I think, and to go to Casey's point, like I would probably be better at it if my focus was purely on everything is awesome, because it's not. Like I'm in Jeff's boat where I am, you know, part of my brain is on everything is awesome. Part of my brain is on the That's Entertainment podcast network, which is really just kind of editing like 2 shows that are part of the network. But I'm also developing 3 new shows that I'm going to have a hosting kind of role in. So like my attention is going to be split on those 3 new shows.
You need some interns, Kev.
I know it's the thing.
Ooh,
I wish I could be legitimate enough to do that.
You are out in the suburbs. That might be weird to have an intern come to your house.
And this is like the scenario where I'm like, man, it would like my best friend in the world, Mike, who helps co-host my live shows. Like, I wish he was way more into podcasting, because then I would have someone like to help me run things.
Dude. Oh, yes. Fate and the Fable Maidens. Renee is able to get her entire cast doing shit for the show.
Yeah.
And I'm so jealous. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not being mean to my cast members. I'm just saying some podcasters actually want to like help out their DM or whatever.
Well, and that was like, we tried starting an actual play where my buddy was DMing a game anyway that I was playing. I was like, why not record it? But like no one wants to take it like serious. Like they want to take it serious enough to play the game, but not serious enough to like record it good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, Jesus Christ, guys. and same thing with like Mike, my best friend, is also like, he is my business partner when it comes to our parent company that kind of have the umbrella over That's Entertainment and the network and this show and stuff. We literally do nothing with it. And part of that is like, you know, his focus is on what he's doing with he writes books and designs card games. So like his focus is on that, which has nothing to do with Crude Humor Studios, and my focus is on podcasting, which has a lot to do with Crude Humor Studios, because that is the only thing we're doing. We would do more things if I think we both had our focus on it, but it's I take on way too many projects is what it comes down to.
So are you still doing podcasting as your job?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
So what's your day job?
My day job is I work. Let's see. How can I say this without? I try not. I'm in IT for the county. I think I can say that. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the general definition of it. I try not to get too much into it, because
I also have a government job. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Oh, that's so much better. I should have said government, not county. But yes, it's but I'm not in the IT department. I work for a specific division of the government / county, and I'm their IT person.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But it also like it affords me the opportunity to like, because I have so many monitors, I literally listen and edit my podcast while working on reports and doing my day job. So like I'm able to have, and my editing process, I hate editing. It's my least favorite part. That's where Jeff and I disagree. Like I hate the process
I was like,
editing.
you guys are like just matching up, right? Check boxes. Just
no, this is not a checkbox we share. But that's because of the live streaming format that you guys need to answer about your live streaming experience too. But like for me, that taught me to not edit. Like I literally will, for this episode that we've recorded together, I will throw in and make sure everything's in sync. I think there was one point where I had to edit something out that I heard you guys say that I'll go back and I'll edit that out. And other than that, like I'm just going to make sure everything's level and then and put it together. So whereas I'm sure Jeff and other podcasters will take their 2-hour show and listen to it.
Not to interrupt you, but that's exactly what Jeff does.
Oh, really? Okay.
I do.
Yeah,
loved Aisha Tyler and Girl on Guy, so I just let it roll.
Like, no, take that like out, take this out. I
only do that for Shattered Worlds and associated actual plays, because those shows get really boring. Like there are long pauses, there are ums and ahs, there's dice rolling, there's fucking going over mechanics and books and shit. There's dudes talking about stuff that has nothing to do with what we're doing. Like, there's a lot of editing that goes on with that kind of show.
Well, that explains a lot.
But with a conversation with 2 or 3 people that like each other, like, I feel like you might miss out on.
His former co-host said that he didn't edit enough. Let's just say that.
Oh, God. Co-host before this one had very particular ideas about podcasting. Let's just put it that way.
And when you're doing a show like these shows, the natural conversation doesn't it's not perfect. Like, you're gonna have what I just said, you're gonna have the uhs and ums in a natural conversation. If you were to edit all, and for me, I don't do it as much as I used to, but back in the day I used to say uhs and ums all the time, and my producer for my original show he cut all that out.
It starts to sound like NPR, which is not what we're doing.
Exactly. And it takes away from, like, the thing that I forget who I had a guest on that listened to my show, like, before I even asked them to be on the show. And they're like, the reason I like your show is because it's so personal. It sounds like a real conversation. And you start editing out those uhs and ums, it becomes more robotic, and it's not a natural show anymore. And you know, it's, so yeah. Well, at least I guess we are on the same editing page.
Yeah.
For me, like, the only reason I edit so hard on those other shows is, like I said, to so we can get to the story and the funny faster.
Well, I think it makes sense for the actual plays. It's all some of the stuff when it comes to the mechanics.
Some don't do it, and I don't listen to those ones.
Well, I think,
so that's just my personal.
But you know, there are, like, and for me, I guess there's certain games that I do like to listen to the mechanics of it and some of the setup for it. But I think that's content that's better suited for, like, the Patreon of it all. Like, and this is my Patreon, I think.
I want to dump big, raw, unedited files on my Patreon subscribers.
and I think, like, I think Patreon is way better suited for an actual play podcast than it is for my show, for Everything is Awesome.
Yeah.
Because you can have that, all that you have the mechanics as a bonus episode. You can have a sit down conversation with the designer as a bonus episode. You can do a lot more bonus episodes, I think, with an actual play than like, I don't know what's bonus in this episode, like, that we're recording right now. Like,
We've talked about that.
I love.
Yeah, you know, like Paul Gilmartin on Mental Illness Happy Hour. He'll give us pictures of him and his dogs, or, like, you know, it's hard, like, when it's a conversational sort of flow, like, what is extra content? Like, it's all there.
I feel like I need to quit my job if I wanted to, like, get into this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And and I know, like, like, if I was able to make money off of this, like, I mean, I guess the thing that's keeping me from ever doing this full time, even if I were to be making thousands of dollars a month on Patreon, is the fact that the day job provides me with the best insurance that I think I will ever have in my life. So
health insurance?
Yeah, like, I have.
Because it's America. Dude, government jobs. We wouldn't have anybody in government service without good health insurance.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was just thinking, I was just gonna say, you were saying something with Jeff earlier, and it brought, like, a thought to me, which was, what if, like, the federal government, or, you know, just the structures of the powers that be, would just allow creators, like artists, to make a living just being an artist?
Yeah.
You know, instead of us having to get a capital A adult job in addition to doing our little, like, lowercase a hobby, like, because if we're sitting here and we're saying there's so, like, immigration is a problem, we have too many laborers, like, there's too much competition, then, like, okay, well, how about share this commodity of work, and so artists can be allowed to be artists but still not have to worry about healthcare, or have to worry about, like, food or their rent being paid, because those, like, costs of living are getting taken care of somehow by some sort of entity that allows them just to be an artist. You know, that would be pretty great.
So I think that's the original idea for the National Endowment for the Arts.
Mm-hmm.
And same with the National Institutes of Health or the Science foundation
But there's
or
just
whatever.
so much bureaucracy around all that.
Of course, I mean, it's government, so you need paperwork for everything, and artists would be loath to fill out a bunch of paperwork. But there are ways to do it, and every society does it a little bit differently. In the Depression, FDR with the Works Progress Administration, they hired a bunch of artists, but they would work on things that were like culturally like appropriate or multicultural. Like they were supposed to make America better, you know. But a lot of times it came down to like making propaganda and stuff like that. So there's a slippery slope there. Then there's the simplest thing that we could do for everyone, which is universal health care.
Yeah.
Friggin' a retirement fund that's worth anything. Like
yeah, just some equity so that artists would feel more comfortable of being like, I'm gonna quit this shop that I don't much care for. I don't believe in their mission, and I would much rather sit here and like create content for my Patreon, for example.
And imagine going to the DMV and not having a clerk that wishes they were doing anything but they're there because of health insurance.
Or whatever, yeah.
Like, and there's tons of us out there. I happen to still love my job. Like,
because you get to listen to podcasts and walk.
Yeah, and my customers aren't awful.
Yeah.
Like, but if I had to sit behind a desk all day for the government and like interact with people that don't like me, like, no, thank you. But I'd stay there because it affords me the ability to do this other stuff.
To survive.
Yeah, and I think France probably does it better. I mean, basically, if you give artists a tiny amount of a safety net, like, they'll make the shit. You know, whether it's rent control or, like, free food, I don't know.
I mean,
whatever.
Even in Britain, they have that, like, the tiers, the different tiers that government employees are put into.
I'm not familiar with this.
Oh, they have different classes of employees that are paid by the government, and so like it's more
like
nationalized.
Can they work fewer hours to do art?
I don't know if art's involved, but definitely like for public health and for like politicians and.
Like, I bet 90% of the people listening to this either are themselves or know somebody that would work 5 to 10 hours less at their job.
Yeah.
If they could keep all their benefits and do fun shit.
Yeah. As long as that things could still be paid for, I would 100% take that deal. Like because that is, and one of my issues is I found out very late in life that that the realistic thing that I wanted to do was something like was film. Like when I was a teenager, it was wrestling. Like, so, I'm going to be a wrestler. And I went to the point where I went and got trained. And, you know, I discussed earlier how I actually did it. And I kind of fell off of my training and whatnot when I broke my ankles. And then I also realized, like, you know, without like all the sacrifice that I was not willing to take, I wouldn't be able to make it as a wrestler. And it wasn't until I was in like 25, 26, before I met my my fiance, and I was in the process of kind of having a mild mental breakdown in my mid 20s.
You just made it through the Great Recession. It's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, well, I mean, I was unemployed, but I was 25 unemployed, and I was like, you know, I think I want to be a filmmaker. Like, that's when I realized, like, you know, if Kevin Smith can make Clerks, and I was a Kevin Smith fan long before then too, but it was then I was like,
dude, first date I ever went on was to see Clerks up in Seattle.
Wow.
Okay. You're dating yourself.
Yeah, because I was.
There was an actual person there.
I was when Clerks.
That was a pun. I'm sorry. I just need to stop down. That was a pun. I got the joke, and then I added a joke to it. So
now you're.
I was just hoping that everyone realized it, and it didn't have to be explained. I was trying to get you through that, man.
Okay,
yeah, no. When the first time I watched Clerks, and this is like my uncle, I had a really strong bond with. Like, he was more of an older brother than anything to me, and he was the one that sat me down at the age of I was 11 or 12 because I was 10 when it came out, and I was probably 11 or 12 when I sat down and watched Clerks with him. because it was on VHS that we watched, I believe, and so that's just showing the age gap now. Like I can see, I didn't know it was that big when you mentioned it earlier.
Well, it was an art house theater. I think it's closed now. The Egyptian, maybe? University District.
Yeah, but even filmmaking, you kind of have to be in
Yeah.
LA. You have to know people. You have to be able to wear all these hats.
Kevin Smith gave all of us at that time this idea that, like, we can't do it. And he's still doing it, like, in every project. He's showing people, like, you say some weird thing on your podcast, boom, a year later you have a film called Tusk or whatever.
And
like,
I still believe that I don't need to be in LA or New York to do it. But it's now in my 30s, it's much harder to gather the people I need to kind of make it happen. And to find the time and the sacrifice that I have, because it's, now it's not just me, it's me and my fiance and the kids, and like, when am I going to find time? And it kind of always boils down to like, well, I'll eventually get to it. And I think it's, the unrealistic, expectations I put on myself of like saying, well, the first thing I need to do needs to be a feature length film, versus like, let's take a weekend and bang out like a 30-minute short or something like that. And that's my own, like, I need to fix my head and get around what traditional media is.
Oh,
like,
dude, I heard the stories about Richard Rodriguez making Desperado or whatever the first one was, on like $40,000 in credit cards. Like, I heard about Clerks. I thought that you make a movie, you make your mark, boom, you go to LA. Like, so to the point where I was all set to go to LA at 18 or 21, I guess, when I graduated from college. And it was only through a weird quirk of fate that I didn't go. But and we don't have to get into, because Casey rolled her eyes. But seriously, I want to hear more about from you from this moment. You're 10 years old or 11, watching it with your uncle. And what is the next thing you did on the track to making films? Like, did you write a short story? Did you act in someone else's film? Like, what happened next?
I watched Clerks when I was like 11 or 12 years old or whatever. And then fast forward more than a decade later to where I was like, finally like a true Kevin Smith, because I rolled my eyes at the silly black and white film. Like, I was like, what am I watching? Like, I wasn't a fan of Clerks when I was 11 years old. I didn't become a fan of Kevin Smith until I was in like I was in high school. Like, by the time I graduated high school, I had like I had watched like all his movies and that were out at the time, and became a fan, but still didn't want to really be a filmmaker. Like, at that point, I was still like in the mindset of wanting to be a wrestler, and I don't think I knew at the time that really meant I wanted to be a creative person, which eventually led to, like I said, I think I was about 25 when I realized I want to make film. Now, I did do like the only thing I've written a lot, like even when I was a teenager. I guess I kind of did have, maybe I did have the, and I didn't know it, the want to be a filmmaker, because I was writing outlines for different kinds of scripts that I never took any further than the outline stage until, maybe.
Okay, stop the show. Throw one of those outlines
so,
at us.
One of them that I'm willing to share, because it's never going to happen, it was, I'm a fan of the Final Fantasy games from Squaresoft, and there's one in particular on the Super Nintendo called Final Fantasy 3, and it's just a role-playing game with a bunch of medieval magic characters. And we outlined that, like that we took that game, which is at least for my generation, like considered the best Final Fantasy before the PlayStation came around, and we outlined that as a.
Was that the one with the flying ship?
A lot of them have a flying ship. It's the one with it's called Final Fantasy VI in Japan.
That's the one with the flying ship.
Yeah.
Yes. It's the one I'm thinking.
But that's it's the one with the World of Balance and the World of Ruin, and me and my buddy sat down and we came up with an outline to like make it like either 2 movies or a trilogy or something. And it's something that like, I think now in 2018 I look at and I'm like, I think it works better as like a Netflix miniseries than it does as a movie, because there's just so much content that game. But yeah, that was one of the outlines. There's one that I stand by that we thought of when we were probably 18 or 19, or like what the person I was dating at the time told me this story that happened, and I was like, that's a movie. Like, that's literally, you change something, you throw Bruce Campbell in it, and it's a movie. And and it's not, and it's honestly not even like a Bruce Campbell type of movie. It's just the one role I was thinking of was like a Bruce Campbell role. And it's still to this day, like, me and my buddy 10 years, no, I'm 34, so probably 15 years ago, said that, like, if we actually were to do this, like, we need to get other work under our belt, because this could be a movie, like, with the right amount of work put into it, could, like, kind of be like an award-worthy movie. And it's the one that,
Yep.
like, I always go back to and think about, and like kind of now even consider saying, why not make that the first project? Like, why can't be, I mean, we've seen people do first projects that are like so incredible. So why couldn't this be like that for us, But I also want to do a comedy first, or a horror first. Like, I'm all over the place with what I want to do film wise, that I have yet to ever really sit down and nail down what I want to do. But I know, like, for me, like, if I'm only going to do one thing, I am leaning towards that project we thought of 15 years ago, because it is, while it's not a personal story to me at all, we built it up to this thing where, like, man, this could be like such like a personal story told for somebody, and connect to some people and whatnot. Like, I don't know. It's something that's, I'm hoping to do in the, by the time I die. So, like, hopefully in the next, 80
cool.
years, if I live that long. But
it's so weird when you have an idea, like, I mean, this happened a lot back before special effects were worth a damn, where, like, you just shelve it because it could never be
and that's
made.
like that.
And nowadays animation is so much easier than it's ever been. Like, I mean, there's a way to make almost anything, I mean, obviously some things, the bigger the budget, the better the payoff, but it's a lot easier than
I lean towards, like, the idea of new media, like for me, like, podcasting is my entryway into new media 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And I have yet to just crack the code, like, in the video world of how to, like, kind of successfully, not, I mean, I guess there's an argument that I don't successfully do this, but to in my eyes, do video successfully in, like, YouTube and whatnot. But that's, like, I've kind of set myself up with, like, what I want to do for the remainder of this year when it comes to podcasting, and kind of set myself up next year with what I want to do with podcasting. And hopefully, like, in my mind, that's like by 2020, that sets me up to do things outside of podcasting, hopefully. And it's like, I've honestly, like, it's funny that I brought the Final Fantasy project, because as something that I'll never work on. My friend and I talked about it probably late last year, saying, like, why don't we pitch that to Netflix? And I mean, obviously we didn't, but I think that's something that would, like, Netflix is like such a viable medium for, it's like kind of the in-between of traditional and new media, for creators to go to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, ever since that, they had the agreement with FX, I think, and that's how they went from being mostly movies to now being mostly TV shows, was when that changed. And so now...
Yeah,
like,
because
Netflix
all the movie studios were like, no, you can't have my movie. And now it's like, all right, okay, this week we've got Nanette. This week we've got a new Amy Adams project. I mean, it's like they're just slamming us with good content. But then now there's, like,
Hulu also, and even Amazon Prime has their own, like, studio that's creating stuff. And then you have HBO. So, like, the entertainment industry is definitely expanding at a faster rate than maybe some of us are even, like, using our imaginations for. And so, like, having a plan like that is actually pretty good, because then it just at least, like, gives you a little benchmark of, okay, like, this is when I'm going to throw my energy into attempting to do this, for example, or just putting it out there.
And if I could take this and turn it into one of Jeff's rules for creative success, the book that will never come out because I have none. But it's always have one idea in your back pocket that is your big budget idea, your mass moneymaker. Because what if you become a household name overnight? Boom, you got that thing. It's right on the shelf. Final Fantasy movie. $200 million budget. Let's do it.
It's a friend and I were joking on Twitter very briefly earlier today about like, hey, like we have the perfect Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 movie if you need a new writing directing team, where it's just Thor and Rocket save the galaxy. Like that's what I want to see. I don't care about any of the Guardians anymore. I just want Thor and Rocket Raccoon to be partners.
You're basically, so what you're saying is take the two funnious characters in Marvel.
I like the tree. I like Groot.
And give them their own movie.
Groot can tag along, I guess. He has to. He's kind of a package deal when it comes to Rocket.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like it. I like a buddy cop situation. Any kind of road movie.
Yeah, well, and I think that's like, and I don't want to get. I guess we shouldn't get too much into this because this could probably be another hour of me talking about pop culture. But
yeah,
things that I like that I think the studios are starting to do this with their comic book properties, but I think they need to lean into it more. Is like do things like Winter Soldier, where you're taking a genre movie like a spy thriller and you're just kind of putting a comic book skin to it.
That's what this New Mutants movie is supposed to be like, right? A kid horror movie kind of.
Yes. Well, now I also heard on the flip side, people have been telling me that because the movie wasn't supposed to be necessarily horror, the person that cut the trailer cut it to feel like a horror movie. And because of that reaction, Fox was like, okay, we got to reshoot this whole thing as a horror movie now. So while I'm hoping that it still turns out to be a really good movie, there is that thing in the back of my mind. Yeah, like hopefully they didn't screw up the movie up now because they're going to use parts of the old film with the reshoots to make this horror film that wasn't supposed to be a horror film. But absolutely, that's what that's the movie that actually made me see that like some properties were doing that. Like I would like that makes so much sense to me. Like why aren't there more horror films and spy thrillers and buddy cop movies that are happening in the comic book genre, or even in like Star Wars is probably like the perfect example of what they should be doing with these side stories. Like Rogue One was that was like the first Star Wars movie that had a war. Yeah, it was the first Star Wars.
It was a war movie.
The only Star Wars movie that was a war movie was Rogue One. And then
Star Wars is like a series of battles and character moments, and that was like a real resistance, bloody. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's like those a Star Wars story films are the perfect place to kind of play around with. And I think they even did that with Solo. Like it felt like a kind of like a race car heist movie to a degree. So I think they
like sci-fi Fast and Furious.
Yeah, kind of.
Have that vibe to it. It was like a little bit funny, a little bit fast and loose. Physics are a little questionable.
And then a little Game of Thrones in there, some ruthlessness.
Yeah. Can we just say, I just want to say to the entire world, I'm sure I've said this on the show already, but I just want to say Solo was way better than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, yeah. I agree. I don't think, and I think really everyone, like, it got kind of positive reactions from critics and the audience alike. It just
I haven't noticed it. I've seen a few people bitching here and there on Facebook, and I'm like, guys, it was really good. Like, I don't. How did that happen?
Well, and here's
how did they not bone it up?
Well, here's what I think the problem Solo has, in my opinion, is that it's a movie that no one asked for and no one really wanted. Like, I don't think we needed a Han Solo movie. Like, I think what makes that character so special is that he's the character we know in Star Wars, the original Star Wars trilogy. Like, he had an air of mystery about him, and that's kind of what I think made him so special.
Oh yeah, and they kind of cheapened that a little bit, but I felt like it brought enough new that I feel like it begs for a sequel or a Lando.
Yeah.
But honestly, the female character in that movie, I feel like
The female robot?
His love interest, fucking Emilia Clarke. Yeah. I feel like she should have her own movie.
I agree
because for whatever reason, it hit me. It worked for me.
No, I agree, and I would like to see, and you know what? Kevin Smith brought this up, or I don't know if it was Kevin Smith or Mark Bernardin on Batman on Batman, but a really good point as to why this movie maybe didn't work. It's a beloved character who the actor that brought him to life is still alive. So
I just lost you. Say that again.
Han Solo is a beloved character who the actor that brought him to life is still alive. Harrison Ford is still around.
Oh, yeah.
So,
dude, imagine this. What if they had done it like one of those movies like The English Patient, where it's a series of flashbacks?
And that may have worked. If you had Harrison Ford have some sort of role in it. Or maybe, there's a whole lot of story that you could tell between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens that you could probably just de-age Harrison Ford a little bit. I mean, Marvel's doing it. Marvel's doing a whole movie with Samuel L. Jackson de-aged 25 years.
What? That shit still looks cheesy. I'm sorry. I don't know.
I think
maybe I'm just super picky, but I feel like we just watched It and I really loved it, but that CGI it sticks out. It's gonna stick out even more 10 years from now.
I don't know. Did you guys see Ant-Man and the Wasp?
Not yet.
I've seen Ant-Man, yeah.
Not the new one.
Now, Ant-Man, I agree. I feel like when they did it in Civil War with Robert Downey Jr. and when they did it in Ant-Man with Michael Douglas, it still felt a little off the de-aging process. But I walked into Ant-Man and the Wasp literally about 2 minutes too late. I missed the first couple minutes, and that was seeing Michael Douglas de-aged again. But I did see Michelle Pfeiffer de-aged in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and it looked exactly like Michelle Pfeiffer of yesteryear. It was crazy how good it was. And if that's the level that they can do it at,
wait. Hold on. Michelle Pfeiffer young. The test is, did you get wood?
No, because
was that a Grease reference?
No, it's a boner reference. It's Michelle Pfeiffer. Come on, Catwoman.
It was she was playing a mom still, so she was very classy. So I think.
Oh, okay. All right, you're off the hook.
But it was crazy how good it looked, and if that's what they can make Samuel L. Jackson look convincingly 25 years younger for 2 hours in Captain Marvel, then there's a world where Star Wars could have a Han Solo movie take place in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, and I think that probably would have played better than what we had now.
Well, I mean, they did have Carrie Fisher, and I feel like they did use some de-aging on her for The Last Jedi.
They did. They had some flashbacks.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't watch that. I've only seen it once, and I don't remember seeing anything with her de-aged.
It's on Netflix, dude. We watched it a second time, and
yeah, she just looks like she has a few Snapchat filters.
yeah, plastic surgery and whatnot. But the first time I saw it, it was so shocking. There were so many things that were reversals after it was hard to accept. The second time, knowing the whole story start to finish, it was like watching The Sixth Sense the second time. It was so deep, and it was I was more emotionally moved. Yeah, watch it. Netflix,
and I enjoyed it the first go around. Going back to probably what I said about 2 hours ago, I'm pretty positive about things. So it's hard to disappoint me. I feel like that's why Solo maybe didn't. I agree with what they said on Fat Man on Batman. I think the fact that Harrison Ford's alive kind of maybe hurt it. Obviously, it being released 5 to 6 months after Last Jedi, I think kind of hurt it. Whereas Marvel can get away with, I think, 3 movies a year, Star Wars kind of needs to stick to 1 a year, and truly 12 to 8 months, 18 months apart.
Yeah, I think jumping more than one a year is a mistake for something that huge.
Well, and like, so
know.
Marvel, before Iron Man, there was really no kind of blueprint. There was no expectation for Marvel. So they're setting the expectation by doing 2 movies a year, by moving it to 3 movies a year. And they're still, they're kind of the same, but they're also different enough to work. I think 3 movies a year. What makes Star Wars so special is that we went a very long time without a good Star Wars movie.
Yes.
And I think that even one every 12 months might be a little too much, but I'm okay with one every 12 months because it's still, I think, a special enough event. And especially if you're going to do, after episode 8, we're going to kind of be out of the Skywalker era of movie telling and exploring different ends of the galaxy. And I think that's where maybe if they're going to, obviously there's going to be an episode 10, 11, and 12, whatever that's about, who knows, but at least with the ones that have that a Star Wars story tag, if they can find interesting ways to make those films come to life by doing, like, give me a horror Star Wars film. You can still do a horror film in a Star Wars skin and it feel like a Star Wars movie. Like, you just need space. You really just need space to make it feel like Star Wars. Like,
I mean, honestly, it's that's what my podcast is essentially. Is just like, I made my own game system. It's a little bit, tiny bit like Star Wars and Star Trek smushed together. Like, like, people want some familiarity, and if it's the big brand giving it to you, it's going to have some level of quality, or you hope. DC.
I liked Justice League. I saw
Casey
Justice
just
League. Yesterday. I like it.
Justice League was I believe the first Movie Pass movie I went out to go see. And I also went to go see it with, like, the lowest of low expectations. And I walked out enjoying the movie. Like, I mean, it wasn't as good as Avengers, but it was still better than Batman vs. Superman, better than Suicide Squad. And it.
Yeah, I would say it was better than Suicide Squad.
I mean,
anything's better than Suicide.
I still haven't seen the whole movie. I fell asleep during it.
I don't think I've seen the whole movie, but
I shouldn't diss. I haven't seen any.
I just love how Harley Quinn was characterized. I just love that. That's what I love about Suicide.
I couldn't even tell you how she was characterized because
she got more screen time and more, like.
What?
What did you like about her characterization?
She just seemed more human. Like Heath Ledger playing the Joker was kind of like our first foray into that. And then Jared Leto did an amazing job as Joker in Suicide Squad. And so, like, Harley Quinn being seen as more than like a clown. Like, she was, I feel like in the older Batman movies, she was like this clown, like all white makeup, like literally like a clown. And now she's more human, and you kind of get why she is the way that she is, and her, like, crazy relationship with the Joker. And so to me, it just made her more real, more believable, more relatable. And that was like all that I really remember from that.
I don't even remember that from that movie because
yeah, I think she was an orphan or there's something like that.
Was she still super evil like she is in the comic?
Oh, she's batshit crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the cartoon Batman works so well because DC has always, at heart, been more of a cartoony.
Yeah,
company.
Now they're moving more towards like that.
Now they're trying to be all hard, gritty, and real, and I don't buy it because I grew up with like fun, bright colors Superman.
Well, I think.
Although Batman: The Dark Knight was pretty good. I don't know.
That's really good. That's one of like the best movies out there.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. That's probably my favorite. At least of the Nolanverse, my favorite Batman movie. I'm always going to be a Michael Keaton guy. So like Batman.
I grew up with Michael Keaton Batman, man. You ever dance with the devil?
Yeah. Oh my God, I have. The very first Wizard World I went to, or maybe it was my second one, in Philadelphia. There was this artist, and his name's escaping me right now, but he painted a picture of Jack Nicholson as the Joker with that quote at the bottom of it, and I saw that and I had to purchase it, and that's right now it's in storage, but it was hanging in my old office at my old job. I have a cubby now, so I can't put it anywhere in my cubby, and it's gonna but it's gonna hang up in my studio when my study is done.
It's gonna have to be in your podcast.
It's gonna go in that there.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can get a studio
your
in the
studio.
city and put up all your cool shit.
Yeah.
Man, Wizard World. So you brought up Wizard World earlier too. You just went to a convention?
Yeah, so that Wizard World was in May, and I only went the one day that we were booked to perform there, and I'm hoping to next year submit more. I'm hoping that they'll at least accept more panels that I submit, so that we can maybe perform once a day there for the weekend, because it was such a cool experience. Like, apparently,
was it a good feeling to go from like being a kid buying a thing there to like being in it?
Yeah, no, it was so cool, because like I never went to conventions as a youngster. Like, my first Wizard World was probably in my early 20s, and never, like, it wasn't until I'd say I started Everything Is Awesome that I said I want to work my way up to being, and this is a bad example because he's a monster, but Chris Hardwick. Like, I want to be the Chris Hardwick of Philadelphia.
Yeah, Casey maybe doesn't know there's some news about old Chris.
Oh my God. He's a monster. Just Google it. I mean, I don't know. I guess there's two sides to every story, but he's a goddamn monster. Oh, and I also have personal reasons why I don't like the guy. And this is why I also believe the victim, because she mentioned other things.
Wait, who are we talking about?
Chris Hardwick.
Chris Hardwick started The Nerdist. He was the host of that show with Jenny McCarthy way back in the day. He had the After Midnight or At Midnight.
Talking
big time nerdy guy.
Nothing is sacred anymore. Nothing's sacred anymore.
He was horrible to his ex-girlfriend, according to her, and maybe other people.
Nothing is sacred.
And
there should be a podcast called Nothing is Sacred.
There probably is.
There probably is. Well, and so my run-in with Hardwick is, and why there's certain things she said in her account that that made me 100% believe her, because when he came and did a live show in Philadelphia with The Nerdist, and this was when I was doing the Walking Dead Zomcast, and we were doing this is when we were doing our crazy numbers with Stickcam, and I had sent his people an email. I was like, hey, I see Chris is doing a show in Philly. Like, I do a podcast. I would love to maybe open for him. Like, this is something that like Philadelphia is kind of just getting into the scene of with live podcasting. And I would love to open for him. And like, here's my background. I do this show called The Walking Dead to Zomcast, blah, 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 blah. And 24 hours later, I got a cease and desist from AMC. And I was like, it bothered me a lot, because like, I get it.
Because he is so about control. Like, it has to be about him and his way. And you guys were apparently not threatening it until it crossed in front of his eyes.
It made me like, it just, he's,
and that's how
he's a podcast. Like, he was a podcaster at the time, and that's how I viewed him. I was like, dude, you started out with like a pod, like, obviously he was on Singled Out and whatnot, but like, you come from the world of podcasting. Like, you know how hard it is to like start a show and like climb up the ranks, and like, you're lucky enough that you were able to become like this dude, like the king of podcasts, the king of nerds, and you're gonna like throw me under the bus like that. Like, it's left such a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to Chris Hardwick. And like, a lot of people have called me out about like how I feel about Chris Hardwick, especially now, saying like, well, you had a personal issue with him before. I'm like, you're right, I did, but I'm also not a monster. Like, you can read what this girl said, and whether you believe her or not, like, that's not for us to like, or whether you think Chris Hardwick is innocent or guilty is whatever. Like, that's for the law to figure out. I'm morally going to agree with the victim, because there's things she said in here that I can personally relate to. Like, he is number one about himself. Like, he cares about no one else, and he will throw anyone that is a threat to him under the bus. and she kind of alluded to that
Yes.
in her essay. So like if I know that's true for a fact, why would anything else she said not be true?
And that's the thing that people, the people that are like, give the guy the benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm right there with them. Like, it could happen to any of us. But when their behavior in other aspects of their life match and mirror what the person's accusing them of, it's much harder to say, there's no way that person could be like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's why Kevin Spacey was just gone one day, right? Because he's an asshole. Like, there are people that are just fucking assholes. And if the truth comes out sooner or later, like, enough people are going to be like, yeah, you're probably right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't have to work with this guy anymore. Especially in this day and age where it's like single or straight cishet white men like have run everything. Like, might as well open up a spot, you know?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. And it's weird being like, I haven't publicly like tweeted anything about the whole James Gunn thing really, because I am that guy who like just threw Chris Hardwick under the bus when everything happened with him. And I don't know how I really feel. I haven't been able to work through the James Gunn stuff yet, because like 10 years ago,
I just saw it. I don't understand it. Like, it feels like there's a lot more that Disney knows that I don't know, you know?
And like the short of it is like 10 years ago, he made some jokes in poor taste. And people can argue that like the kind of jokes he was making are like super crude and like maybe hint at something. And I don't know that they do, and I guess there is an argument that like maybe 10 years ago he was in his early 40s and maybe he should have been old enough to know that those kind of edgy jokes were wrong. But like 10 years ago, I was doing Howard Stern type of comedy. Like I was kind of doing the same, not the same stuff that Gunn was, but I was doing edgier stuff. And 10 years ago, that stuff was way more acceptable, which doesn't mean that it's right. It absolutely doesn't make it right at all. But I've also changed in 10 years. And so has James Gunn. He's changed in 10 years. So it's,
it was just a really quick
and
hammer.
I don't,
like, they pulled the plug real fast.
And I don't know that they're wrong for that. Like, I don't know that I necessarily disagree with the fact that James Gunn was fired.
Like, they hired him after all this stuff was on Twitter.
Man, you guys are dropping scandal after scandal.
Like, I just don't understand
why. I don't know any. I just Googled Chadwick Hardwick. He's married to a Hearst. That's gonna be fun. Now I gotta look up.
We got all kinds
James
of stuff
Gunn
to talk about after the
guy.
show.
Oh my goodness. It's a tough time. It's a tough
Patreon
time
subscribers,
right now.
once we get our Patreon going, afterwards it's just going to be me and Kathy dishing about shit we just learned from our guests. I'm like, can you believe that shit? So yeah, so I guess just to wrap on Gunn, like if I was Disney, I would have done my due diligence and said, hey man, you said all this stuff, you either have to get it off of the internet and make a statement before we give you the job, or like that was the old James Gunn.
It's like
he's a new guy now.
It's like the moral crusades right now.
Well, and the reason that there's a lot of people who are like angry that Disney fired Gunn over this is because some like super right-wing person dug up all of these tweets that Gunn made literally like 10 years ago, if not longer, because Gunn is so anti-Trump.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, and very vocal about being anti-Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I wonder what we're gonna do 10 years from now when we take Trump's tweets.
Right? Like it's nuts that Gunn got fired for that, yet we have the president that we have. And someone made the comparison of like,
God damn it! Are we getting into this? Are we getting into the fact that
getting excited? Oh man!
I've been a Democrat, a liberal, a socialist my entire life. 99% of the things Republicans do from the moment they wake up to the time they go to bed, I cannot do without getting a ration of shit from Republicans. Like, it's a completely double standard. It is fucking garbage all the way up and all the way down. I hate it. It makes no sense how can they get away with shit that we can't? It doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
I'm dying over here.
Not they them. I mean, it's not us against the world. Like, let's not do this. Okay. I mean, that's
if President Obama farted in public, it would be a national scandal.
Well, I mean, it was a scandal that he didn't.
President Trump could shit in the Japanese ambassador's soup, and they would be like, "Hey, what's your fucking problem?"
My God.
He could take his dick out and like slap the queen in the face with it.
Which he kind of did.
Fuck that guy.
Oh my God.
Fuck.
Okay, well, I don't know if we can get into like, it's, they, this and that, Republicans this, Democrats that, because we've talked about how, there's dualities in all of this, and at the same time, everything is awesome. Don't forget.
My God.
Oh man, how did this get started? Let's see. Wizard World.
I think Kevin is like sweating over in Philly right now.
No, that was a great little like tangent. Like normally tangents are just like Batman related.
Okay, so Wizard World, you're going to do more conventions. You're going to become the new Chris Hardwick. You're going to get Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and a Final Fantasy update, maybe a Netflix series. Are we caught up?
Yep. That catches us all up.
Okay, it's going to happen.
Okay, good. I'm going to expect you emceeing Wizard World 2 years from now. How's that sound?
That's the hope. That is the honest God dream, and it's funny. The last live show I did at this little bar called Tattooed Moms for the Philadelphia Podcast Festival. I don't like. I'm not a comedian at all. Like it's very obvious I'm not a comedian because I'm garbage when it comes to comedy. But like so my monologues have changed in the 3 years I've been doing live shows, where like they used to be like 20-minute monologues. I've now gotten down to like a sizable 5-minute chunk of me trying to do comedy. And the only joke I had this year that I was really disappointed that a lot of people didn't like really enjoy, because maybe they just don't know who Chris Hardwick is, it was a good thing, was like I compared myself to Chris Hardwick, saying, I was like, I'm just like every other white nerd. I'm kind of like Chris Hardwick, and just like him, just like the good version of him, you've never heard of me. That was like my opening joke, and no one laughed because like no one knows who. It turns out no one knows who Chris Hardwick is unless you're a nerd.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's amazing that somebody could have so much power and yet not be a household name in the way we traditionally think of it.
It was when he was trending on Twitter when this all happened a couple weeks ago. Like a lot of the things I saw in the trending was like, who is Chris Hardwick? Like there was a lot of that, which was nuts to me because I was like, he's the biggest dick in the world, and now he's a monster. Like how do you not know who he is?
He is married to a hearse, so
stay tuned for Jeff and Casey After Hours.
All right, guys.
All right. Well, usually before we go, we share some of our writing. We're not going to do that this week because we're pretty much at the end.
The writing process.
But I would like to end with a few podcast recommendations. Do you guys have any?
Well, if you don't mind me going first, I will.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I will recommend from the One Shot Podcast Network Campaign. The Campaign podcast. It's a Star Wars actual play podcast. And it's going to be turning into something else. It's the long form actual play version of One Shot, where they just play a game for like a month. Campaign for the most right now is about to end their like 3-year Star Wars campaign.
Wow.
And it is, if you're a Star Wars fan, it's really good. I found it just at the right time. Like Star Wars means a lot to me because of my uncle, that I mentioned earlier. And when he was going,
you've mentioned your uncle a couple times, and I would love to hear about him too. Just learn about him.
So he was, he was 16 years older than me. So he wasn't. We were like really similar in age. We lived at his, we all lived at his mom's house, my mother's mom's house.
Grandmother?
Yeah, my grandmother is probably the right way to say that. But I like my family lived there for a while, and he obviously lived there too for a while before he moved out and went to college. But we were just always super close. Like we always like in Manayunk, which is a little section of Philadelphia. There's this thing called Bike Race Sunday in the summer where there's a bunch of people racing bikes to raise money for something or another. And I used to hang out there every year and just like drink with him, and we just hang out and like randomly go to people's backyards, and we'd go skiing together or snowboarding together. And we just hung out a lot, and he was like super important to me. He was more like a brother. And in 2016, in January of 2016, he found out he was diagnosed with cancer, with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And by July he was in recession. And it was great. Like we were all happy. Like it seemed like that 7 months was like super easy for someone with cancer. And then literally the day before my first ever live show with Everything Is Awesome, I found out that it had come back, and it had come back big and bad. And it never, like, he ended up being allergic to one of the chemos, and he just never fully recovered from that. And he passed in November of 2016. And
oh yeah, so that's sudden.
Yeah. And I mean, like by the time we had like a solid like probably week or two of knowing that he wasn't going to make it. It still sucked, obviously, and it's still like I still kind of he passed away November 6th. Thanksgiving is obviously a couple weeks after that, and like with that side of my family, my mom's side of the family, especially as a kid, we were always like hanging out on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and always playing like Phase 10 and Skip-Bo and all these crazy card games. We would always just play as a family on these holidays. So like, whereas I don't really hang out with family as much because I have my own family now, on these holidays, they still mean a lot to me, and the memories especially. So like, it's the anniversary of his death, and then Thanksgiving, and then his birthday's December. My mom is the 21st of December, and I believe my uncle's the 20th, or it's the other way around. I always confuse it, but it's birthdays and then Christmas and all that stuff happens. So like the end of the years, it has been tough. It was tough last year. It was obviously in 2016 when he passed, and in 2017, kind of the 1 year anniversary was tough and whatnot. But he's the guy, like I before he passed, like I kind of always like selfishly kind of credited Kevin Smith to my sense of humor, but I don't get to Kevin Smith without my uncle, and I don't get to Star Wars without my uncle, and like I don't get to any of these things without him in my life, and I wouldn't be who I am today without my uncle. And so getting back to my recommendation, and that kind of sums up who my uncle, like in a very short, like I could go hours, but in a very short kind of package, like that's who my uncle was to me. And why, like it like, and I guess, I mean, maybe everyone, their uncle affects them big time when they lose him, but I don't know, like I said, he was more of a brother to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear like that you lost somebody that was so influential in like the development of who you are, and like molding, your perspectives that way that he did. So,
and giving you that
definitely, hopefully show in your work.
Give you that destiny and like hope. Man, you called him your uncle 100 times. What is his name?
Alvin, Uncle Alvin. And I call him my uncle because like in my 30s, I still called him Uncle Alvin. And a lot of people thought that was weird, but like, to me it wasn't. Like I always called my family by like the proper terminology. Like he was always my Uncle Alvin, and my aunts were always my aunt, and like him and I, like if you look at a picture of my uncle and you look at a picture of me, like we literally are almost twins. Like it's crazy how much we looked alike, to the point where like I still see some of his friends today, like whether in passing or we get together for whatever, or like, the saddest part of losing my uncle is obviously, there's a sad part for me, but the saddest part is that his son is only a few months older than my son.
Oh, wow.
So like his son is going to be 7 in just a couple months, and I'm trying to talk without. I feel the breakdown happening, but to me the saddest part is that I got to experience who my uncle was as a person. But his son doesn't. Like, his son only knew him for
Mhm.
a handful of years, and that's like the saddest thing that for me.
Well, now you get to be the uncle to
Cousin,
him.
I get to be the cousin to him, but he calls me.
You can make him
No,
call
he
you
already
Uncle
does.
Kev.
Well, if you're Asian, if you're Asian like me, it all kind of passes over because my cousin has a son, and I call him my
Okay.
nephew, even though he's
Well,
like
and he does call me uncle for what. Like, it's funny. He does because
There you
when
go, yeah.
my uncle would tell my cousin, he's like, your uncle or whatever he is. Like, that's probably why he calls me uncle, because my uncle did refer to me as uncle but it's, my dad is also named Kevin, and my dad is his actual uncle, like, so it's yeah.
Confusing. Double Kevs.
Yeah.
Are there any properties or like Star Wars things or things that came out after he passed that like that you that was bittersweet enjoying, or like you felt like he would have liked it or wouldn't have liked it? Like, if you had moments like that?
Yeah, definitely the Star Wars stuff. Like, Force Awakens was like one of my biggest regrets is not seeing the Force Awakens with him, because when Force Awakens came out, it was like right before he was diagnosed.
Oh.
And like the reason
Mhm.
Star Wars, the earliest memory I have of Star Wars is the first time I watched it was with him, and the only thing I remember from watching it that first time was when Luke is looking through the binoculars and that Tusken Raider pops up and scares the shit out of him. And I remember being like jump scaring at that. and that's like the memory of me watching, like, that's my introduction to Star Wars, is that moment right there, and watching it with my uncle. And
Did I do it? I think I screwed up.
I thought it was a weird dog in your background. I was like, what the hell? And I do greatly regret not seeing The Force Awakens and not making it a point for us to go and see that together, because it would have been like just a cool moment that in hindsight would have meant so much to me, at least. And now, like, when I bought tickets to The Last Jedi, I bought 2 tickets, and just kept one in my car with the picture I have of him. And I didn't get the opportunity to do that with Solo, but like, I mean, it's, it's not the same. The saga films to me are always going to be like more connected to my uncle than these other ones. But at the end of the day, yeah, like every Star Wars movie that will ever come out, I will always have my uncle like next to me in some fashion. And there's certain like like games that I can't think of a game right now that has come out since that maybe reminds me of my uncle, but like, he was my introduction to Leash Suit Larry,
Yeah,
those games and whatnot. And it's hard to kind of, on the spot, it's hard to think of anything that's come out that made me, like, the most recent thing that's made me really think of my uncle is we went to Busch Gardens for vacation last week, and his profile picture on Facebook is him in, those like old school red phone booths, like they're glass with red.
Oh yeah.
Now, he didn't get his picture. His Facebook profile is him in one of those, like, pounding on the glass, screaming. And he didn't get his done in Busch Gardens. He was down at the shore or something. But like, we walked into Busch Gardens, and my fiance was like, "Isn't that like what your uncle took his profile picture in?" I was like, I mean, it's definitely the same type of booth. I don't know if it was this one. So I went and got my picture taken in that pose, because it, I look like my uncle, and it just was like kind of a neat thing to kind of experience and do. And that's like the most recent thing to really happen, that like was an unexpected moment for me to walk into Busch Gardens, not really having my uncle in my mind, and then having him like suddenly be there with me. It was really cool.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah,
you know what? We just got our show title.
Well, good.
On my mind.
My uncle on my mind.
There you go.
But going back to like why Campaign ended up being such an important podcast to me, because it's this little dopey podcast of improvisers doing a Star Wars actual play, and it literally was the thing I listened to like remind to just forget about the shitty thing that was happening to my uncle. And eventually I was still binging it when he passed away. So like, it was my escape from like thinking about him passing away. And so Campaign, while it is this very funny podcast that does have its emotional moments as well. Campaign is, if you're a Star Wars fan and Star Wars has any meaning to you in any way, even if it's a fraction of what it means to me, and I'm not the biggest Star Wars nerd, like I don't know anything about
I'm just finding out about it now. Like I do one of these things. Like what the hell's going on?
Well, and
this has to be the most emotional, like, and uplifting recommendation for a podcast I think we've had on this show.
And it's literally a podcast that like, and I'm like Kevin Smith, I can cry at the drop of a hat, but that show for no reason really, except for the fact that the connection I have to Star Wars through my uncle has made me laugh and cry. And it is, like I said, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. Like I love Star Wars movies. I've never really read anything outside of the Star Wars movies. Like I'm not in the expanded universe. I don't know every single detail about the Star Wars movies. I just like them as entertainment. And I'm getting more into like the Star Wars mythos as time has gone on, like in the last couple of years here, because I want to be a bigger fan, because I don't know that it meant that much to my uncle beyond the movies, but because of that connection I have with my uncle, I want Star Wars to mean something more than it ever has in my life. So anything that's Star Wars content I want to take in, because it's just that connection. And Campaign is absolutely one of those things that they are probably within the next couple weeks or months wrapping up their Star Wars story, and now's like the perfect time to like hop in and binge listen to Campaign, because it is for me, like, it's just one of the most magical podcasts out there that I'm sad that I'm caught up, because I can't, when I'm feeling sad, I can't just go and listen to it. I mean, I can if I want to listen to an old episode, but you know, I can't experience it fresh for the first time again. Listen to it. That Campaign is definitely what I would recommend.
It's a solid recommendation. Casey, what you got?
What was that one episode we listened to in the car? I'm not much of a podcast person.
She has one of these jobs where you actually have to like think real hard while you do it.
Yeah.
I'm
and
a mailman. I get to just walk around.
It takes so much of my creative space too. So like if I'm listening to a podcast, I'm gonna like be all inspired and have all these ideas, but they're gonna have like nothing to do with what I'm actually doing. You know. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but for me, it's difficult. It's difficult to switch my brain like that. So, and then I pick up phones too, like if there's any phone calls. So those are the worst interrupters for podcasts, because I'll just pause the podcast and then forget that I even had it playing. And so I just don't play it.
I turn off a podcast immediately anytime anything distracts me, because I don't want to miss a second, but I'm weird like that.
Okay.
So we were listening to one together in the car.
I think it was Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Oh yeah, it was Wait, Don't Tell Me. Yes.
Yeah.
I since I got heavy into podcasts, I don't listen to NPR as much, but that is a funny show.
So what's that about?
It was the Not My Job compilation. Mm-hmm. So it had like famous people on and doing funny things.
Cool.
Do you remember who was on that one?
I don't. It was an interesting episode.
It was the most recent. Whatever. It was good. Let's do it. Luke Burbank from TBTL's on there sometimes. I've mentioned that show 5 times now in this episode. Too Beautiful to Live. Listen to it. It's good. It's just 2 best friends talking about their lives and shit.
Oh, man, that's right up my alley.
Yes,
they were like whining about, what were they whining about? Like Salon Pass patches, or like scheduling an adjustment for their chiropractor. And I'm constantly telling Jeff to go get adjusted. And he's just like,
I'll get to it.
Yeah, so like Luke and Andrew were talking about it, and I was like, see? Like, this is what people do.
Your other friends do that thing. Yes. If I'm going to recommend one, I have a long list, but I noticed that one I enjoy was at the Philadelphia Podcast Festival with you. It's Rachel's show, We're All Mad Here.
Oh.
It's very good. It's kind of history of mental illness, like how things developed, sometimes more contemporary story.
Oh.
It's a one-person show it's just her telling stories. It's good.
I definitely would have to also plug the Historical Hotties podcast.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, since the last time we've been on, we haven't talked about it, but we just had a cross promo episode with them drop on July 4th, and it was about revolutionaries.
Yup, I did Harriet Tubman.
Mm-hmm.
You did?
I did Huey P. Newton.
Huey P. Newton, Black Panther Party. It was awesome. They're two funny sisters that invite people on to like talk about a hot person from history and then like
they have like the
rate
rating
them.
system. Yeah,
it was really fun. They just had their 1 year anniversary where they like recapped some of the ones that didn't win but that were like also awesome. Freddie Mercury I think got on there. Jack Kirby, the cartoonist, comics genius guy. Mary Shelley, some others. Anyway, but we were on there most importantly, so you guys should listen to that. And honestly, Kev, if you want, I will connect you with Whitney and Lindsay because I think you'd be great for that show as well.
And they're amazing. The way they produce the podcast is clean. It's really awesome, and they did an amazing job editing. I think it was
Lindsay. They made me sound smart.
They made me sound like I knew what I was talking about. I mean, we've been sitting. We recorded this months ago, and I'm sitting on there like biting my nails, like I think I sound stupid. Like I remember my voice shaking, and they didn't. I sounded so smart. I'm very proud. And
honestly,
they do
guys,
amazing work.
When Casey's voice shakes, it's because it's really important. And it's moving.
It's true. I too can cry. just with the drop of a hat.
I cried during the Muppet movie, so it doesn't get.
Oh, yep. I can relate. Yep.
I only cry at movies and television and podcasts.
What else is there beyond that?
Life shit, I guess.
No, it's funny. It's my fiance at the time was pregnant with my son, and we went to go see the Muppet movie, and at the end, Kermit has that speech about friendship. Maybe I forget what the speech is about, but I sit there and I start tearing up, and like tears are running down my face, and she looks at me, she's like, "Aren't I the pregnant one? Why are you crying during the Muppet movie?" I'm like, it's just so emotional.
That's great. Well, those are our podcast recommendations. This is where we end our show. Do you have anything you want to do before we end?
No, usually I do my post outro, like, so I don't, it's just like usually an awkward ending of like, hey, thanks for doing the show, guys.
Yeah. And we all go around and have like a sign off, and I usually read something. So let me go grab the book.
Yeah, I'll grab it for you.
Oh,
You're
okay.
all comfortable.
Okay, yeah. So we wrap up the show with a quote from my book of wisdom. And usually it like relates to the show for whatever reason, but it's kind of my Zen approach to things of everything is awesome.
You see, I like that you guys have a structure to your show, and I don't know if, because this is such a combination of the two shows, if that was painted out, and I apologize for ruining it, because I know I just talked the whole time.
Oh, it's okay. We don't have our crap together, so it's not like we could have given you like a summary show sheet or like an outline or anything.
I envy shows that are structured. Like, I wish that like I don't know if cared enough was the way to put it, but like I don't know. There's no structure to this, and it's but I don't know. Then I want to get to talk about Batman all the time, so I guess that's
Yep.
That is your structure. Your structure is the Batman.
If I'm to talk about a show that combines how you like to do your show, but also like you like shows that are two friends talking. Yeah. Will Anderson and Charlie Clausen, they're Australians. They do a show called Tofop. I'm not going to get into what that means. It's just, they'll explain it. Listen to that show. It is so funny. They've been doing it since 2009 or 10 or something. Anyway, it's real good.
So we're skipping the writing process, but maybe we could do something post or something.
Sure. I mean, this episode's only 3 hours, so I think we can add more at the end, guys. Stay tuned.
So it'll be A, B, and C. So the quote we have here is, "Sensibility is the capacity to feel, recognize, and distinguish the most tiny and subtle changes," by Swami Prananpad.
Can you read that one again? That was real fast.
I know, right? Sensibility is the capacity to feel, recognize, and distinguish the most tiny and subtle changes. Sensibility.
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 Interesting. I'm going to wake up at like 4 a.m. and be like, I get it now.
Sensibility. The capacity to feel, recognize, and distinguish the most tiny and subtle changes, which is probably like our whole conversation that we've had for the past 3 hours or so.
Well done, you guys.
This
Kevin,
feels good.
thank you for coming on.
No, yes, thank you for having like the awesomeception as I titled our Zencaster. It's been a long time coming. I forget what triggered it a couple months ago, but I was like, we finally need to do this. Like maybe it was our 100th episode. I don't know, but
I think it was somebody congratulating me for your 100th episode.
Yeah, I forget what it was. We actually talk about your podcast a couple times in our other episodes. I don't know which ones. We reference this when we talk
It's
about
usually
it.
when a guest is like, I tried to find you, and then I found this other one, and it wasn't you.
Yeah, I think we did talk about it a couple times with different guests, but I'm shy, so like I don't like putting myself out there and like having the possibility of somebody rejecting me, even though they're a complete stranger.
Yeah.
So like what Hardwick did to you, I probably would have been traumatized. Like I don't like it. I don't like feeling rejected. So I was never going to do it. But Jeff is just fearless when it comes to just asking people and being able to reach out to them and getting them to agree and do things. So we owe it to Jeff to do this. Yeah. Because he didn't want to. He was like, F him.
Don't put words in my mouth, buddy.
The truth comes out.
He had that like old, like the old sensibility of being like, oh, it's competition, and I was like, no.
It was more like he is in a big city. He's got lots of listeners. Like,
no. Oh God,
I'm not even.
Yeah,
we're on the same level.
Jeff likes to say everything is small time, and so he was thinking we're small time. I'm like, no, this has the potential to be great. And so we had a guest on, and they kind of like aired with me, which was like, yeah, and so he did it, and here we are. And I'm super glad and happy and grateful.
Yeah, no, and this is probably for my show one of the longest episodes that I've recorded. I think I've recorded one other 3-hour episode in the last 2.5-3 years.
Oh goodness. Yeah, no, like one of the first things I noticed about Jeff's podcast or this podcast was how long the episodes were. So I was like, okay, so maybe we should have a structure of like 90 minutes, like more than an hour, but less than 2.
I'm always kicking the door open, always pushing my foot.
Yeah, but we have such great conversations with our guests, and you can't put structure to that.
And when we started, I talked about how, when we were talking about not doing it every week, that is the one thing that not doing it every week, you miss the space that it creates in your life to just be with people. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Like I love, like sometimes I overbook. Like I'll have like 3 interviews in a week, and I'm like, oh my God, what do I like for the Philadelphia Podcast Festival. I booked probably 12 interviews in a matter of like a week and a half, just so I could like talk to all these Philly podcasters.
Gosh.
And like I don't know how I did it. It was like I'm on Weight Watchers, so like I think that's like I have more.
You were delirious.
Yeah, like I used to stay up all night doing editing and reading and watching shit, and like I would literally pull all-nighters all the time as little as like 5 years ago, and then I gained so much weight that I was like tired by 8 p.m. So like a month before the Philadelphia Podcast Festival, I joined Weight Watchers, and I finally dropped enough weight to where like I can be delirious and still function.
Nice.
So for me it's about almost 1:30 in the morning. So I will be.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. This episode is brought to you by Weight Watchers.
I'll take that Weight Watchers money if they. They're already getting all the
guys.
Money.
Stay tuned for our after show. We'll be doing an actual play podcast with Kevin, and then also talking more about that other thing that we said we were going to talk about. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
definitely read some comics. We like to also throw out little taglines out there.
Oh yeah.
Awesome things to do.
Love each other.
Water
treat each
your
other
bees.
right. Yep, water anything you need water in. I'm gonna go water my cat.
All right, thank you to Jeff and KC for being on the show. I think we sat down and talked for over 2.5 hours, despite whatever length of podcast you got in these last 2 weeks. They were very generous with their time. There was some miscommunication on my end and slight delays on my end, but we made it happen. The crossover happened. The Everything is Awesome from Earth A, Earth 1, whatever you want to call it, and the Everything is Awesome from Earth 2, Earth B, whatever you want to call it. We finally crossed the multiverse to make this episode happen. I hope to collaborate with both Jeff and KC, the Everything is Awesome podcast from Tacoma. I would love to do more collaborations with them in some fashion. Hell, I wonder, what would it be like to have two Everything is Awesomes on the That's Entertainment Podcast Network, huh? That would be weird, right? Huh? Jeff, KC KAOS, I'm throwing it out there to you. Make it happen. Thank you again for them and all their time for being on the show. It was a blast. I enjoyed it. If you're looking for other podcasts to listen to, I'd love to recommend Bullies Keep Out. Bullies Keep Out, the podcast, is from the founder of Bullies Keep Out, Dana. And she sits down and chats with people about bullying. She talks about specific subject matters when it comes to bullying and coping mechanisms and stuff like that. Her own personal experiences are brought in, and every now and then I come in as the clown who talks about his perspective of bullying. We all have been in that position, and I think we've all been in both positions of either being the bullier or being bullied. Everyone, to a degree, has experienced both sides of that fence, and we use, our hindsight to kind of help us grow from that. And Dana and myself, whenever I am a guest or a guest co-host on that show, we bring our perspectives to help people deal with being bullied, perhaps even deal with why people are bullies. Check that out on thatentertains.com/network. I want to remind everyone that on October 1st, we are launching a brand new podcast, After Party of One. It's a talk show about the Party of One podcast, where we sit down each and every month with a small round table of guests to discuss the previous month's episodes of Party of One podcast. I believe we know we're going to have the creator of Party of One, Jeff Stormer, on as one of our first guests on the round table, and I'm working on our second guest now. And we're going to sit down and we're going to kick this show off right, talking to the host of the show and get his insights on the episodes that he drops in September of 2018 here, and talk about how he went about crafting those stories, why he chose those games, why his guests chose those games, if he knew, and just kind of get a feeling for how he puts together a show and get some just inside GM knowledge of what it takes to put on an episode of Party of One podcast. And again, we'll have another guest on there to help us navigate those waters. We like to end Everything is Awesome with a call to action. Super friends, there are a lot of terrible things happening right now, and it can feel like you can't do anything to help, but you can. It takes people like us to make a difference, and one of the easiest and most important ways to take action is to call your representatives about issues that are important to you. Issues like the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2018. The Violence Against Women Act landmarked legislation first passed with bipartisan support in 1994 and is set to expire on September 30th unless lawmakers pass a reauthorization bill. The act established the Department of Justice's Office on Violence Against Women and provides funding for the investigation and prosecution of domestic and other interpersonal violence, stalking, and sexual assault. In July, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee out of Texas introduced a reauthorization bill that would not only reauthorize funding for the Violence Against Women Act existing programs, but also establish new policies to help abuse victims remain in stable housing, expand red flag laws to block people convicted of dating, abuse, or stalking accessing guns, and broaden protections against abuse for Native American women. The House is on recess until September 4th and will only have 11 legislative days. To pass the critical legislation upon their return. While the VAWA reauthorization has historically enjoyed bipartisan support, not a single Republican has co-sponsored the current reauthorization bill. Urge your representatives to stand up for women and reauthorize today. It's never been more important in the Me Too movement to support something like this. Obviously, the Me Too movement is a broader thing than just women, but historically, women have been victims and have never had the support when they need it the most. We need to make sure our representatives know that we want to pass the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2018 by September 30th. When I call my reps, I use a site called 5calls.org. That's the number 5calls.org. There, you'll find issue summaries of issues that are important to you, contact info for your representatives, and a script to read while you're on the phone to make sure your message gets across. Calling is quick, easy, and is one of the most important ways to have your voice heard. It can make a tremendous difference. Let your voice be heard. Thank you to our supporters on patreon.com/thatentertains. If you want to support us in a non-monetary way, word-of-mouth recommendations and 5-star rating reviews on iTunes are the best way to spread the good word of awesome. You can find us on @RealAwesomePod on Facebook.com and Twitter. You can also find us on Instagram @AwesomePodcast, and we're available on awesomepodcast.com and, of course, thatentertains.com/network. You can get more news about this show at awesomepodcast.com and thatentertains.com. But also on my personal Twitter @ThatNerdyKev is where I do a lot of things. If you're interested in ad rates, live appearances, help with your podcast, or having a question or comment, email us at awesome@crudehumorstudios.com. Everything is Awesome is a production of That Entertains Podcast Network in association with Crude Humor Studios. Crude Humor Studios is a Philadelphia-based production company specializing in audio. You can find more information at crudehumorstudios.com. Thanks for listening, super friends. We've been awesome.
That's Entertainment Podcast Network. Entertainment and culture. Artist-owned, fan-supported.